He leaned back in his leather chair, oozing smugness as he glanced over the wine list he had no intention of reading. The restaurant was upscale, the kind where everyone knows your name if you're rich enough. And he was. Or at least, he acted like it. Polished Rolex, crisp designer suit, and an air of arrogance so thick it filled the room before he even spoke. Across from him stood a young black waitress, calm, poised, and quiet. She greeted him with a warm smile, but he barely looked at her. She wasn't important, at least not in his world. Just another face expected to serve to step aside. Until she handed him a small menu printed in French. That's when it started. He smirked. "If you're so smart," he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, then translate it. The words cut through the clinking glasses and soft piano music like a slap. The tone wasn't playful, it was mocking. Arrogant. A challenge dressed as a joke. Some diners turned to glance, sensing tension in the air. Others lowered their eyes, used to this kind of moment. But the waitress didn't flinch. Her name was Maya. College student by day, waitress by night. Smart, driven, fluent in 3 languages, though no one at this table knew that. She'd heard it before, of course. Comments disguised as jokes. Tests she wasn't supposed to pass. But this was different. This man wasn't just another rude customer, he was a CEO. Powerful. Entitled. And now everyone was watching. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Maya had her own story. One that didn't end the way he expected. The air went still as she picked up the menu and slowly turned it toward him. And what happened next? No one saw coming. Not the diners, not the staff, and especially not the man who thought he had the upper hand. Because in just a few seconds, the room would fall completely silent. And he would be the one left speechless. Maya's fingers tightened around the leather-bound menu, but her face stayed serene, almost curious. She'd spent years rehearsing this calm, growing up in a small Louisiana town where being the only trilingual kid with dark skin meant always bracing for someone else's surprise. French from her Creole grandmother, Spanish from neighbors, English from everywhere. Words had become her armor and her bridge, yet tonight they felt like detonators, seconds from exploding across the white linen tablecloth. Across from her, the CEO Richard Langford, age 47, venture capital darling and frequent cover star of glossy magazines, tapped his Cartier pen against a crystal glass. It was the gesture of a man used to meetings bending to his tempo. 25 startups owed their survival to his funding, just as many founders whispered about the price of his approval. Power suited him. Kindness, not so much. But Richard wasn't always this way. In college, he'd scraped by on scholarships, tutoring classmates in economics. Somewhere between his first million and his first Gulfstream jet, the boy who once waited tables himself decided humility was unprofitable. Tonight, he saw Maya not as a mirror of his past hustle but as a prop for his present ego. The dining room absorbed the rising static. A couple on date night fell silent. The sous chef poked his head out from the kitchen pass, sensing the shift. Even the pianist let a chord linger a beat too long. If restaurants had weather, this was the pressure drop before a summer storm. Maya inhaled, letting memories steady her pulse. 3 hours earlier, during the pre-service briefing, the manager had warned staff about big names on the reservation sheet. Handle them with extra care. Smile wider, move faster, and unspoken, endure more. She'd nodded, thinking of textbook chapters that still waited for her after the late shift. She glanced at the menu's elegant script: bouillabaisse, ratatouille, coq au vin. Simple enough, she thought. But the challenge wasn't vocabulary, it was motive. Richard's request wasn't born of curiosity. It was a dare framed as ridicule, a public audit of her intelligence. Translate it, prove yourself, or shrink. The stakes stretched far beyond a dinner service. For Maya, it was every sideways glance in classrooms, every "you're so articulate" that really meant, "I didn't expect you to be." For the onlookers, it was a silent referendum on how loudly they would stand against casual humiliation. And for Richard, though he didn't know it yet, it was a cliff edge, one step from a fall that money couldn't cushion. A single bead of condensation slid down his untouched glass of Bordeaux. Maya noticed the droplet's slow descent, felt time dilate with it. She considered simply reciting the menu, earning polite applause, moving on. But something heavier stirred. A memory of her grandmother telling her, in musical French, "Sometimes silence is the loudest sentence." Maya wondered how loud she wanted to be tonight. She lifted her gaze, meeting Richard's eyes without the slightest tremor. His smirk wavered, just for a heartbeat, under the precision of her calm. Somewhere in the back of the room, a phone's camera lens caught the moment, the red record light blinking like a tiny witness. Richard cleared his throat, pen drumming faster. "Well?" he prodded, his voice slicing the hush. Maya exhaled slowly, words forming behind her lips like storm clouds massing over the bayou. Around them, breath held, hearts knocked, and the space between question and answer stretched thin as rice paper. One touch from tearing wide open. And that, right there, is where we'll pause, teetering on the edge of what she will choose, of how a single translation or refusal could rewrite the evening, their reputations, maybe even the trajectory of Richard Langford's ironclad career. Richard's knuckles whitened around the pen, a tiny crack in his polished facade. He could feel eyes on him, patrons, staff, that blinking phone camera a few tables away. For a man whose fortune was built on controlling narratives, this loss of control felt like standing barefoot on broken glass. Maya sensed it too. The moment when power teeters, when a single breath can tip the scale. Yet even as adrenaline hummed beneath her calm, another tension coiled inside her. Rent was due next week, and the university's international study grant she craved required a pristine employee review. One wrong move tonight could cost her that dream. From the kitchen doorway, sous chef Diego watched with bated breath. He'd arrived in the country 10 years earlier with nothing but knife skills and borrowed English. Maya was the first coworker who'd ever corrected his pronunciation without a hint of mockery, and he'd never forgotten. Now he balanced a hot skillet in one hand and loyalty in the other, step in and risk the wrath of management, or stay silent and betray a friend. Meanwhile, across the room, influencer couple Jasmine and Theo exchanged wide-eyed looks. Their food review channel lived on viral moments, and they knew gold when they saw it. Jasmine's phone was already rolling. Subplot stakes rose. Would they post raw humiliation for clicks, or intervene and risk losing the content that could spike their subscriber count? At Richard's table, a new player entered, the PR consultant he'd invited for a quick advice dinner before tomorrow's board meeting. Dana Klein, immaculate in a slate-gray pantsuit, slid into her seat just as the tension thickened. She scanned the faces around her and recognized danger faster than the sommelier could uncork another bottle. Richard's empire rested on public perception. Viral clips of him belittling a black waitress? Catastrophic. Dana leaned in, voice low. "Rich, maybe let's," he cut her off with a flick of that pen, pride trumping prudence. "I've asked a simple question," he announced, louder than necessary, making sure the room heard. "I'm waiting for a simple answer." Maya's chest tightened, not with fear but with visions, her grandmother's stories of ancestors who'd survived by swallowing pride, the protest marches she'd attended last summer, the dream of translating novels that carried voices like hers across oceans. Words mattered. Delivery mattered more. She took a measured step closer to Richard so the tablecloth brushed her apron. "I can translate every item," she said softly, "but I'm wondering which translation you really want, the literal French to English or the language of respect you seem to have misplaced." A collective inhale swept the room. Somewhere, silverware clinked to the floor. Diego's hand froze mid-plating. Jasmine's camera captured a sharp zoom on Richard's face. Dana's lips parted with the beginning of an apology she feared was already too late. Richard's jaw tightened. A moral crossroads opened, retreat and save face, or charge forward and risk self-immolation. His flaw, arrogance disguised as confidence, pulled him toward the cliff's edge. "Cute," he hissed, "but I'd settle for the French. Unless that's beyond your pay grade." Maya felt her pulse hammer in her ears, yet her voice remained steady. "Very well. But first, a short preamble." She tapped the menu. In old Provence kitchens, chefs developed these dishes as acts of survival, turning scraps into sustenance, respect into flavor. Translation isn't just words, it's history and humanity. Are you prepared to taste that, or did you only come for spectacle? Richard opened his mouth, but Dana squeezed his wrist under the table, a silent plea. He yanked his hand away, pen clattering, ego outweighing counsel. Another subplot emerged, Dana calculating whether to quit tonight or attempt damage control that might define her career. Behind Maya, the restaurant manager, Claire, stepped forward, face flushed. She was torn between guest satisfaction metrics and her own memory of climbing the service ranks while dodging harassment. Fire Maya to placate a whale like Richard, or stand with her and risk the restaurant's shareholders? Her hand hovered near Maya's shoulder, wavering. The pianist resumed playing, softly, a melancholic chord progression that felt like foreshadowing itself. As notes drifted through the charged air, Maya finally began to translate one dish, then two, her French flawless, cadence deliberate. With every elegant phrase, Richard's smirk faded another shade. Yet before she could finish, the front doors swung wide. Two uniformed health inspectors entered, clipboards in hand, an unannounced audit triggered by an anonymous tip texted minutes earlier. Eyes darted. Who tipped them off? Diego? Jasmine seeking a twist for her video? Or Dana pulling an emergency lever to drag focus away from Richard's meltdown? The inspectors scanned the tense tableau, then approached the host stand. Richard stiffened. Health code headlines could decimate his stake in the restaurant chain he secretly co-owned. Maya paused mid-sentence, sensing currents she hadn't predicted. Every subplot now tangled, stakes layering like phyllo pastry, reputations, livelihoods, social justice, and now a potential scandal no one had planned. And in that electric hush, clinical gloves snapping, cameras still recording, French syllables hanging unfinished, the story's fault lines creaked, ready to fracture in whichever direction the next heartbeat chose. Clipboards snapped open like guillotines. The lead inspector, a lean woman with razor-straight bangs, asked for the manager. Claire hurried over, casting a worried glance toward Richard. He didn't acknowledge her. His attention was locked on the inspector's fluorescent gloves sliding along banquettes, the flash of cameras beside them. If they found a single violation, breakfast headlines would read, Tech Titan's secret stake in scandal-plagued bistro. His board meeting was in 9 hours. Dana's phone buzzed with reporters' numbers already circling. She whispered, if they start shutting things down, your investment leaks. Pull back now. Richard's nostrils flared. Retreat tasted worse than humble pie. At the kitchen pass, Diego's breath came fast. He knew the walk-in fridge compressor had been faltering for weeks. The owner, a Richard by proxy, had delayed repairs. If inspectors opened those doors, warm shellfish would condemn the place. Sweat beaded on Diego's brow as he weighed loyalty against self-preservation. He could quietly swap out the bad trays, but cameras were everywhere. Maya saw Diego's signal for help, a quick hand over his heart, 2 fingers tapped twice. She understood, trouble in the cold storage. But stepping away from Richard risked forfeiting her own stand. Torn, she caught Diego's eye and mouthed, hold on. Across the room, Jasmine flicked her live stream from private to public. Thousands joined within seconds, chat exploding. CEO meltdown, waitress hero, health raid. Theo angled the mic for better audio. Viral gold. Yet guilt gnawed. Broadcasting someone's potential restaurant closure meant dozens of jobs. Still, the subscriber counter climbed. Inspector Bangs reached the first table. Swab scan, note? She turned toward Claire. We'll need immediate access to your kitchen logs, temperature charts, and ownership documents. Richard stiffened. Ownership documents. Dana blanched. Claire's face said she knew, but hated knowing. Maya inhaled, voice flowing in flawless French again, finishing the coq au vin description. Diners who understood the language blinked in admiration. Then she switched back to English, steady and sure. That translation sufficient, sir? Each word rang like a bell. Richard opened his mouth, then the lights flickered. 1, 2 stutters. A power surge rattled the chandelier, crystal prisms clinking like teeth. Gasps rippled. The pianist's hands froze over ivory. Emergency generators hummed but dimmed everything to an amber gloom, enough for drama, not comfort. In the half-light, shadows stretched long, conspiratorial. Dana seized the moment. She stepped between Maya and Richard, voice pitched low. Stop this. Apologize. Publicly. Now. We spin it as a teachable moment. Richard's jaw clenched. Apology meant surrender. He pivoted, stormed toward the host stand where Inspector Bangs reviewed documents. This inspection is harassment, he hissed. I have powerful partners. Wrap it up. Bangs barely glanced up. Sir, are you the owner? Her recorder's red eye glowed. Silence stretched. Chat comments on Jasmine's feed raced. He's the owner? OMG. Maya, watching, suddenly felt every diner's gaze tilt to her. The systemic web revealed itself. The man mocking her also controlled her paycheck. Courage curdled with risk. Speak up and risk dismissal. Stay silent and become complicit. The moral dilemma pressed like a vice. Diego couldn't wait. He rushed from the kitchen carrying a metal tray, intercepting Bangs. Inspector, you need to see the seafood immediately, he blurted. Gasps. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Public sacrifice of product meant certain citation. But Diego's voice quivered with purpose. Guest safety first. Richard lunged, grabbing Diego's arm. Not another word. Cameras caught the grip, the snarl. Flashbulbs, phone LEDs sparked. Maya's heart pounded. Every beat said choose. Her grandmother's voice floated up, "Silence is loud, but truth is thunder." She stepped forward. Before a syllable left her tongue, the back door slammed open. A kitchen porter sprinted in, yelling, "Smoke in the alley." Dumpster fires climbing up the wall. Panic ignited. Flames flickered in the side windows, reflecting in goblets like molten gold. Sprinklers hadn't triggered yet. The restaurant's hushed luxury now smelled of imminent disaster. Inspector Bangs snapped orders, "Evacuate the dining room." Now. Richard froze, eyes darting, fire, inspection, cameras, his empire teetering. Maya grabbed Diego's wrist, steering him toward the exit. Claire ushered guests. Dana dialed 911, her voice sharp. But Jasmine kept streaming, lens fixed on Richard. Viewers soared past 50,000. Thea whispered, "Babe, we should go." She hesitated, then focused tighter. Maya, near the door, turned back. Richard stood alone, framed by smokelit gloom, watching everything crumble. In that instant, his gaze met hers, pleading? Defiantly proud? She couldn't tell. The sprinkler heads above them quivered, ready to burst. Water or flames, one heartbeat away. The room braced. The sprinklers burst. A sound like sudden rain crashed across the ceiling as icy water sprayed down in every direction. Cries of surprise, shrieks, chairs scraping hard against marble. Linen napkins soaked in seconds. Designer coats clung to panicked patrons. The upscale restaurant, once the stage for power games and quiet judgments, now looked like a sinking ballroom. But Maya didn't move. She stood at the threshold, soaked to the skin, watching Richard. Everyone else was in motion, Diego helping usher staff toward the alley exit, Claire guiding guests with trembling hands, but Richard hadn't moved. He stared at the smoke-painted window, then turned slowly back toward the chaos he had ignited. And then came the twist no one expected. "Stop the evacuation," he barked at no one in particular. "This whole thing, this fire, it's staged." Voices froze. Even Bangs hesitated. "What are you talking about?" Dana snapped, pulling her phone away from her ear mid-emergency call. Richard pointed toward the kitchen porter who'd shouted fire. The young man, Leo, stood near the exit now, rain-drenched and blinking. "I recognize him," Richard growled. "He's not kitchen staff. He's an actor. Or more accurately, a plant." Maya narrowed her eyes. Richard stepped forward, voice cutting through the storm of sprinklers. "This is a setup. All of it. That video," he jabbed a finger toward Jasmine's phone, "was planned. The health inspection? Perfect timing. Even the fire scare." Gasps rippled. Inspector Bangs stiffened. "Are you accusing someone of interfering with a state inspection?" "Yes," Richard said, almost triumphant. "Someone very motivated to tear me down." He pointed, not at Maya, but at Dana. Silence detonated like a firecracker. Dana went pale. "What?" She called in the inspection. "I saw the alert on her phone earlier. She leaked my investment docs to the press. She's been waiting for a chance like this." Dana's mask of composure splintered. "You paranoid narcissist," she hissed. But Maya noticed something. She didn't deny it. Jasmine's camera swung to Dana. "You knew this would go viral," Richard continued, soaking wet but electrified by the chaos. "You knew I'd lash out. You counted on it. What did you want, revenge? Or control?" Dana stared at him, lips parted, but no words came. Then she looked straight at Maya. "And said I did it for her." The room fell into stunned quiet. Even the sprinklers seemed to hush. "She's brilliant. Fluent. She deserves more than serving men like you." Dana's voice cracked. "I wanted the world to see her." Maya's knees nearly gave out. "You used me? I elevated you," Dana said, tears mixing with rainwater on her cheeks. "You think people like him let us rise on our own?" Maya's hands balled into fists. Betrayal slashed deeper than any insult Richard had thrown. Dana, the woman who seemed to whisper justice in a boardroom voice, had manipulated the whole evening into a media weapon, using Maya's dignity as ammunition. Richard, for once, said nothing. Maybe it was the shock of being right. Maybe it was the sudden realization that he and Dana weren't so different after all. Inspector Bangs stepped forward. "I don't care about your vendettas," she said coldly. "But staging an emergency response is a criminal offense." Dana didn't flinch. "Then arrest me. Just don't let her story end as background noise." Maya stood between them now, drenched and furious, her voice like lightning across wet stone. "You both think this night is about you. It never was." Every camera swung toward her. And then the back door burst open again, this time not with staff, not with fire, but with a local news crew tipped off anonymously. Microphones, lights, the works. The real performance was just beginning. The storm reached its peak not with fire, but with flashbulbs. The news crew's cameras lit up the drenched restaurant like a movie set, casting Maya in their center spotlight. Not by design, not by scheme, but because truth in that moment had no better representative. Reporters swarmed with questions. "Ma'am, is this your place of work? Were you targeted? What's your name? Did you really speak French like that?" Maya held up one hand, not for silence but for space. Then she stepped forward, not toward the reporters, not toward Richard, not even toward Dana. She walked to the center of the room where the fallen pen still lay on the flooded floor. She picked it up. A dozen lenses followed her every move. "This pen," she said calmly, "was thrown at me in mockery. But I know what it means to hold language in your hand. I was raised to respect it, how it carries history, culture, pain. You asked me to translate, Mr. CEO? Let me finish the job." She looked straight at the camera, her voice rising above the chaos. In French, there's a phrase, l'arrogance précède la chute. Arrogance precedes the fall. A hush rippled over the room. Even the sprinklers had finally sputtered out, dripping their last from ruined ceiling tiles. Richard's mouth opened, then shut. No words came. No one was listening to him now. Dana, her mascara a river, watched with a mix of awe and guilt. Her betrayal hung in the air, unresolved. But Maya wasn't finished with her either. "To Ms. Klein," she continued, "thank you for your belief in me. But belief without consent is control. You don't get to script my story, no matter how noble your edit." Dana lowered her gaze. And to the cameras, Maya turned toward them, her voice clear and human. "I didn't ask for this spotlight. But if you're watching, know this, I am not a moment. I am not a meme. I am a woman with a name, a future, and a voice. Remember that the next time you press record." Applause began slowly, from Diego, from Claire, even from patrons who had witnessed the scene morph from theater to revelation. It swelled, genuine and rattling. Even Jasmine lowered her phone, wiping her cheek, whispering to Theo, "We don't need to post it. She already said it best." Richard slumped in his chair, undone not by fire or scandal but by irrelevance. His legacy, stock, boardroom power, even his pride had withered in the span of a few truthlit minutes. Inspector Bangs made her final notes, then turned to Claire. "The violations were minor. Fix them. You'll keep your license. But the ownership structure," she glanced at Richard, "will be reported." Maya handed Claire the pen. "It's time someone else signs the checks." Claire smiled, truly smiled for the first time that night. "Let's talk about that promotion." And just as Maya turned to leave the spotlight, one final twist caught her off guard. A soft voice called from near the exit. An older black woman, silver-haired, well-dressed but modest, approached with a weathered leather folder clutched to her chest. "I saw the live stream," the woman said. "And I recognized your voice. That cadence. That clarity. My name is Elise Dufour. I used to translate novels from French to English back when publishers wouldn't pay us properly. I think I might have something for you." She handed Maya the folder. Inside, pages of a long-lost manuscript, handwritten, yellowing, and stunningly alive. "It's unpublished," Elise whispered. "A black woman's story, written in Creole, translated once, but never by someone who lived the experience." Maya's breath caught. A new translation, a real one, not just of language but of legacy. Weeks later, the restaurant reopened under a new name, Nouvelle Voix, New Voice. Gone were the white tablecloths that once muffled real conversations. The rebranded space kept its elegance, but infused it with warmth, deep earth tones, reclaimed wood, a rotating gallery of local black artists. Claire ran the front of house now as general manager, while Diego took the title and pay of head chef. His empanadas, once a side note, were now center menu. As for Maya, she didn't return to wait tables, but she did return on her own terms. She came in one quiet morning to meet Elise again, the manuscript now fully in her care. They sat by the window, sunlight pouring in, flipping through pages neither had authored but both had inherited. A story silenced by history was now being revived with careful breath, one translated word at a time. Jasmine visited too, not with a camera but with an apology. She offered to donate proceeds from her viral clip, yes, it hit over 3 million views before she pulled it, to a scholarship fund Maya had started. For translators of underrepresented languages, Maya had said. Not just linguistics. Lived experience. And Dana? She stepped down from her board seat and took a long leave from the public eye. Maya received a letter from her weeks later. No excuses, just remorse and a check made out to the fund. It came with a single line, "You were right. A voice is not an asset. It's a right. Richard predictably vanished from headlines. Rumors swirled, he lost funding, stepped down, moved overseas. But Maya didn't track his downfall. She had other things to build. She accepted a fellowship to translate the manuscript Elise had entrusted to her, turning an unknown black woman's 1940s narrative into a modern-day literary debut. Publishers were already circling, but Maya insisted. No edits without cultural consultation. No whitewashed covers. No tokenization. This wasn't just a story. It was a resurrection. In the final scene of the story she was translating, the original author had written a line Maya now repeated often, like a prayer. If they do not hear your voice, speak again. Not louder, just truer. And so she did. The internet may have met Maya under flashbulbs and fury, but her legacy wouldn't be clickbait. It would be ink. It would be breath. It would be voices too long kept quiet, finally harmonizing. As the camera pans out on Nouvelle Voix's soft glow, a group of young girls enters the restaurant's front door. They are on a school field trip, notebooks in hand, led by a teacher pointing out the framed photos of Maya and Elise on the wall. One girl lingers beneath Maya's photo, tracing her name. That's her, she whispers to her friend. The lady who spoke back. And that's the moment we leave you with. Because stories like these don't end. They echo. Final quote. Language is power, but truth is choice. Use yours wisely. Call to action. If you've ever been underestimated, misjudged, or silenced, don't just wait for permission to speak. Create your own platform, honor your voice, and uplift others while you do it. And if this story moved you, share it forward. Because the world needs more true translations.